Number one, Max, I did not think that there was a debate.
No.
Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. We go back to the LSU days, right? I mean, like this has been one of the best quarterback receiver combinations that we have had in the sport of football since 2019, and those two getting reunited in Cincinnati. It's just been fantastic stuff ever since Chase came into the league after Burrow did. So that one's number one for me. Philadelphia Eagles, I got Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. You talked about jumping on some grenades. I had A.J. Brown ranked as my number one wide receiver heading into the 2025 NFL season, so that's a big boost there as to why that duo and that combination is number two. Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins, I have them at number three. The Washington Commanders, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. And then number five, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans. Where do you want to start here? We can go anywhere. We can talk about all of these groups, but where do you want to start here with this ranking, these top fives?
I think it's only natural to start off with number one right there. And you said it right there. It's an obvious number one. I completely agree with you because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, even though you have Jamar Chase as number three receiver, you even said, Trevor, in the video and in your article that he's still a tier one wide receiver, right? And the Bengals also have a tier one quarterback, in my opinion, as well. And Joe Burrow, they're the only team in the NFL who could say that they have both of those things, right? So I think it's a pretty obvious number one right there with Burrow and Jamar Chase. And we've seen how great they've been together. Chase is now the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. Burrow is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL as well. They were really a big part of why Bengals made the Super Bowl a few years ago too. So that was, in my opinion, a pretty obvious number one, and I'm glad you had the Bengals number one there.
Yeah, when Burrow is targeting Chase specifically since 2021 when Chase came into the league, 96.5 passing grade. That's unbelievable. And obviously, stacking a large sample size really helps out your PFF grade there. It's not like it's been that for a single season, but when you continue to have success throwing to the same player, it's really going to boost your grade there. 53 big-time throws since 2021 when targeting Jamar Chase. It just shows you how often Joe Burrow goes to him in the biggest situation. So I didn't really think that one was too much of a debate because I had Jamar Chase, my number three wide receiver going into the season. We have Joe Burrow as our number two quarterback going into the season. And if you want to argue that Jamar Chase is the number one wide receiver, you can do that. Again, I came to the conclusion that it's a bucket of A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase there. But if you wanted to say that Chase is at the very top of that grouping, okay, I can understand that. I disagree with it a little bit going into 2025, but that's okay. So both of those guys being in the top three, I had to get them at number one here on the list. Who's next for you?
I really like the call out of the Texans with C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins. And I don't think people would have expected them to be this high up on the list, but I agree with you, Trevor. I think C.J. Stroud is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. He's been one of the 10 most valuable quarterbacks in the NFL in each of his first two seasons so far. And Nico Collins is still getting underrated as one of the elite receivers in the National Football League right now as well. He's got an elite receiving grade in each of the last 2 years as well. And it's a young duo too, right? I think C.J. Stroud is still even more to tap into for him going into year three, which is very scary considering he's already, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback in this league. So, yeah, number three for some people might be a little high for the Texans, but I agree with you, man. I think C.J. Stroud and Nico Collins are one of the best duos that we have in the sport.
Yeah, I also didn't go into this exercise thinking that I would have had them as high as number three overall. I think when I was just initially off the top of my head thinking of duos and doing this list, I had them maybe fifth or sixth just because I knew that they would be close to that mark. But the more I looked it up, the more confidence I had that these two, when you think about it, really is a top three connection in the league. Collins has earned a 117.8 quarterback rating when targeted over the last two seasons. That's sixth best of all wide receivers in the NFL. And I only think this group is getting better. Nico Collins, back-to-back seasons where he has had an elite receiving grade. C.J. Stroud, a little bit of a tick back in the passing grade for him. Oh no, excuse me, it was a 77.5. No, I had that right. 80.4 in 2023 his rookie season, then 77.5 in 2024. Sorry, a lot of words here on the screen, but it was a little bit of a tick back, but it's generally the same for C.J. Stroud. But to me, the passing grade for Stroud not being at an elite level is really about who he's targeting outside of Nico Collins. Because when he has targeted Nico Collins, he's been a big play machine, and this connection has been one of the best in the league. And I think that because this is a little bit predictive, right? We're talking about 2025 and beyond. I really do think that Stroud and Collins are going to be a top three, top 5 at the very least, wide receiver and quarterback connection that we have moving forward. Anybody else in this top 5? Did you want to hit on?
I think I love the Buccaneers in the top 5 there. Of course, Tampa Bay Trey puts them there, but I do think, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans. Mike Evans has had 1,000 yards every single year of his career for over a decade now, right? So he's got to be somewhere in the top 10. And then Baker Mayfield, I just love the renaissance he's had in Tampa Bay after kind of getting run out of Cleveland, I think unceremoniously, when he actually was pretty good, I thought, with the Browns. It's kind of a roller coaster with the Browns, but has really rebuilt his career with the Buccaneers and is now at least an average to above average quarterback in the NFL too. So yeah, Baker Mayfield, I love what he's done with Tampa Bay. And, when you have a guy like Mike Evans, who's a consistent 1,000-yard receiver every single year, yeah, they're going to be pretty up on this list.
Yeah, and, Mayfield and Evans is another pairing that I had a little bit lower to start because we ranked Baker Mayfield as our 13th best quarterback going into the season in 2025, and then I had Mike Evans as the number 9 receiver. So you think, okay, yeah, maybe somewhere around like the top 8, top 10. But when I looked at the numbers of these two specifically, not only did you mention the consistent 1,000-yard seasons with Mike Evans, but 2 different offensive coordinators. Now they're about to be on their 3rd different offensive coordinator. And over the last 2 years, which is the last 2 years that Baker Mayfield has been in Tampa Bay, their total receiving yards together was 2,259. That's 3rd in the NFL from a quarterback wide receiver duo of players who were on this list. And their 22 big-time throws with each other over the last 2 years, that's second only to Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill. So the more I kind of looked at that, it's like, okay, individually, yeah, Mike's a fringe top 10 wide receiver in the league, Baker Mayfield kind of the same way, but together as a collective, I think they're fantastic as a duo. And we're going to get into, as this list goes on, a little bit of nuance of, yeah, okay, the stats are kind of good with these two, with this quarterback throwing to this wide receiver, but does that make them a great duo? Or how much does the scheme go into this? There's a couple of big name quarterbacks that have their top receivers where we have to have that conversation. I don't think we have to with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans, who it just feels like in every single situation, Mayfield can go to Evans and he can feel pretty confident about throwing him the football. Very clearly he has over the last 2 years. They'll now have to prove it with a 3rd offensive coordinator over the last 3 years. So next 5 teams, so let's round out the top 10 here. I have the Detroit Lions with Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown at number 6. Number 7 for the Los Angeles Rams, I've got Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua. Number 8, the Miami Dolphins, it's Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill. I think that we do have to have a conversation about them. I don't know if that's where you want to start, but we do have to talk about them and their place on this list. Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, 2 players who I think individually, again, you could rank higher on lists than here, number 9, but interesting enough, Prescott's passing grade of an 83.4 when targeting Lamb over the last 2 years. One of the lower passing grades amongst the duos here in the top 10, which I felt like knocked them down a tad here. And then the Atlanta Falcons. This is my bet. Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London. That is my big time bet there. Do you want to start there at number 10, or where do you want to start here? We got to talk about them eventually, but where do you want to start?
Yeah, we could absolutely start there. I think Michael Penix Jr., what he showed late in the season when he was inserted as a starting quarterback was some elite stuff, right? I remember one game he had against the Panthers, where he had like 6 big time throws in that game, right? And I also think Drake London, like Nico Collins, is one of the more underrated receivers we have in the National Football League too. So yeah, it's making a bet, obviously, with Michael Penix Jr. only starting a couple games in his career so far, but what he showed in those 2 games, or 2 or 3 games, was really, really good, some good stuff. So yeah, I think number 10, I think is fair considering how good I think Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London could be together in that offense.
Yeah, the exercise is an interesting mix of what's already been done, which sort of gives you confidence in what's coming, but ultimately it's ranking quarterback and receiver duos heading into the 2025 seasons. You're talking about a little bit of predictive stuff here where you don't want to hold guys back if you think that maybe they'll take a little bit of a step back. Again, we need to talk about Miami there in that regard. Mm-hmm. I don't think that with the Falcons. And to me, it's really hard to not look at what Michael Penix Jr. and Drake London did last season and not just want to dive headfirst into what they could be in 2025. Week 16, 17, and 18 of last season. So those are the 3 starts that you're talking about with Michael Penix. He recorded an elite 89.5 passing grade when targeting Drake London specifically. 4 big-time throws, 15 first downs, 352 passing / receiving yards between those two in those games. If they pick up where they left off, And I really do think they're going to open up the offense and just run it, the passing offense specifically, through Drake London. This is a top 10 duo in 2025. So again, do they have the overall volume numbers? Not with Penix, but I will tell you that Drake London, another fringe top 10 receiver, somebody who has earned really high receiving grades through the first 3 years of his NFL career. Drake London is certainly not unfamiliar with ranking right around the top 10. Michael Penix, yeah, a little bit just because he's new in his career, but I think this is going to be an elite group moving forward.
And Trevor, just another thing too. I mean, you saw at Washington what Michael Penix Jr. did with a good contested catch receiver in Rome Odunze. I mean, Drake London is a more souped-up version, basically, of Rome Odunze, right? So I'm really excited to see that duo next year, and you're completely right. And I think that goes kind of underrated with Drake London so far. He's kind of had subpar quarterback play throughout his entire career in Atlanta. Now you're giving him an exciting quarterback in Michael Penix Jr., who was a top 10 pick in last year's draft. I think that could be a very dangerous duo next year.
So Miami, let's have the Miami Dolphins conversation. Yep. This one's kind of hard for me because Tua goes through more injury stuff in 2024, which he's obviously dealt with a little bit of that throughout his NFL career. He dealt with that a little bit when he was at Alabama. The Dolphins offense as a whole took a dip in 2024. Does that make the Tua and Hill connection any less going into 2025 if both guys are fully healthy? And Mike McDaniel is still the play caller there. Like, he's still the guy who orchestrated in 2022 and 2023. Nobody was touching this duo. I mean, Tyreek Hill had some unbelievable numbers. He had more than 1,700 receiving yards in both of those seasons. He was uncoverable, an elite receiving grade, and obviously Tua was the one who was throwing him the ball in a 2-year sample size. So it counts one of those seasons in 2023, and then even counts this past year in 2024 where they took a step back. Tua's 93.9 passing grade when targeting Hill is the highest passing grade of any of these quarterback wide receiver duos in the top 10, including Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. That's how dominant this duo is when they are on. In 2024, obviously a major step back. It was just a 75.0, and they didn't even eclipse it with 700 yards together, but that had to do with, Tua being in and out of the lineup. Now, Hill is over the age of 30 now. I still don't think that he's going to fall off a cliff, even though speed is often the first thing to go, and that's really what his calling card is. I went back and I watched a lot of this duo, when I was ranking Tyreek Hill for the wide receiver rankings last week, as well as this exercise as well, and he's still got the juice, man. He can still find the holes in zones. He can still beat guys off the line of scrimmage and press coverage, and Tua was not afraid to throw him the football when he was out there. So if we get a fully healthy season from these guys, and there's a little bit that you have to take into account with Hill's age and certainly Tua's injury history, but it's hard to keep this duo outside of the top 8, given what they did and just how dominant they were in 2022 and 2023. So would they be far and away the best duo in the NFL if they're fully healthy? Maybe not that, but certainly one that deserves to at least be in the top 8 and certainly could finish in the top 5 and the top 3 like we've seen in years past.
I think this is completely fair ranking because I think you said it right there. With Tua fully healthy and Tyreek at his best, this is one of the best, if not the best duo in the NFL. But the thing is, you can't trust Tua to be healthy right now. I mean, there's only been 1 year in his career where he started more than 13 games in a season. And even last year when he was out there, he was 28th in the NFL on PFF grade. Now, of course, he missed 6 games due to injury, and Tyreek Hill didn't have his best year either, but also Tyler Huntley was playing, started 5 games for Miami last year too. This is a fair ranking because I think you're kind of going into a wait-and-see mode in Miami right now for Tua Tagovailoa. Can he stay fully healthy, or are the Dolphins going to have to look to move on, pretty soon at quarterback and find someone that they can rely on a little bit more? It just sucks with the conversation with Tua because he had top 10 PFF grades in 2022 and 2023, but he just can't stay healthy. And this past year, you saw his play even take a dip when he was on the field too. So I think number 8 is fair because you don't want to have them too low considering how dangerous they are when they are together, but also you can't have them too high either because you just can't rely on Tua right now to stay healthy, or even Tyreek Hill had kind of a down year this past year too.
6 is Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and there's certainly numbers where you could argue them as a top 5 quarterback and receiver duo. Those stats would be over the last 2 seasons. No quarterback and pass catcher duo has more yards together than Goff and St. Brown at 3,260. Goff's quarterback rating of 126.8 when targeting St. Brown is also second only to Jaden Daniels, 131.5 when targeting Terry McLaurin. So these guys certainly have a case to be even a little bit higher on this list. Ultimately, I felt like 6 was pretty comfortable just because Jared Goff he's lower on our quarterback rankings anyways, and Amon-Ra St. Brown right around that top 5 mark for wide receivers. I felt like this was a good healthy spot for them there. Also, we didn't touch on Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. I do feel like we should. I want to mention them before we sort of move on and get outside of the top 10. Not only did Jaden Daniels come in number 6 at PFF's quarterback rankings in 2025, McLaurin also cracked the top 10. I put him at number 10 in the wide receiver ranking. So you got 2 guys in the top 10 right there. So that automatically puts you in the conversation, I think, for being at this spot. But not only did Daniels earn an elite passing grade of a 92.9 when targeting McLaurin, Marcus Mariota also earned an elite passing grade of a 93.2 when he was called into action when Daniels was hurt. That shows the true star power and versatility. I mean, you're talking about star power, these guys both being ranked in the top 10, and then the versatility of Terry McLaurin basically saying, okay, I don't really care who the quarterback is. I'm going to be a great receiving option for them no matter what. Now, I don't let that take away from the greatness of Jaden Daniels. Instead, I just let that be an enhancer of what Terry McLaurin is. So to me, I think that some people might look at that and be like, whoa, number 4 with McLaurin and Daniels, but I wanted to make sure that I called that out. These 2 guys individually and then together form an incredible duo. And moving forward, I think that things will only get better with Deebo Samuel there because I think that it'll open things up more for Terry McLaurin as well.
I mean, Terry McLaurin has been dealing with subpar quarterback play his entire career until this past year, right? So it's completely understandable why when Marcus Mariota comes in, he goes, all right, business as usual. I'm just going to still put up elite numbers even with a backup quarterback in here. So, yeah, it makes complete sense that, this is a duo that's in the top 5 because, like you said, Trevor, Jaden Daniels had one of, if not the best rookie year we've ever seen from a quarterback, right? So he was great, and then Terry McLaurin has been great his entire career for nearly a decade now. So I love them that high up in this list. The one I would say, Trevor, in the NFC East that I would put maybe a little bit higher is the Dallas Cowboys. I think you had them number, what was it, 9 on your list. I think Dak Prescott, he's coming off the season-ending injury last year. In 2023, though, he was elite. He actually was the most valuable player in football in 2023, according to our wins above replacement metric. And then I think CeeDee Lamb is a top 4, top 5 receiver in football right now. So I think Dak, and also Dallas Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb is the offense right now. Now, of course, they brought in George Pickens to kind of complement him a little bit, but I think if I had to change one thing with this list so far, it'd probably be Dak and CeeDee be a little bit higher on this list for me.
Yeah, they were tough because I like both Dak and CD. I think that both of them are top 10 players at their positions when they're healthy. And they certainly have the volume stats when both of them have been out there on the field. Almost 2,500 passing yards over the last two years and 19 big-time throws between them. But when you look at Prescott, 83.4 passing grade, specifically when targeting CeeDee Lamb. That is a lower number. I think that you're going to continue to hear throughout this exercise. There's a lot of guys that have 90, 91, 92 passing grades when targeting their number 1 wide receivers. And Dak's passing grade was just so much lower when targeting CeeDee Lamb because it also, it dealt with a lot of separation versus man coverage. Was that there versus other wide receivers and other duos? Dak had a handful of turnover-worthy plays when targeting CeeDee Lamb. And so I totally understand what you're saying because, again, I think there's an argument for them to be a little bit higher. But that's why I had them a little bit lower because the only real duo that I would have had below them is Stafford and Nacua. And I have them at number 7. Stafford's had a 92.1 passing grade when targeting Nacua, which is almost 10 points higher than Dak when he has been targeting CeeDee Lamb over the last 2 seasons. They also had 2,390 passing yards, so close to Dak and CD, although I think that could have been a little bit more had they been fully healthy both of those past 2 years. 12 big-time throws, which ranked 10th, and Nacua specifically led the NFL last season in receiving grade at a 93.0. So it was one of those things where I wasn't going to put Dak and CD above Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown because the volume was just, it was too much in those guys' favor. We talked about how Tyreek and Tua is sort of the wild card that you don't exactly know what to do with. If you wanted to put Dak and CD above those guys, I guess I could understand it. But out of respect for just how dominant those 2 guys were, if you want to bring up the health concerns with Tua and missing time, or sorry, with Dak, you would then also have to apply that to Tua. And when both of these groups have been fully healthy, clearly Tua and Tyreek Hill have been the best in the NFL and certainly would have bested that duo in that matchup head to head. So I don't disagree with you. 9 seems low. 9 seems too low for Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. But that's how I got to that conclusion of having them at number 9.
I think it's an interesting exercise because I like the way you went about it. Going into this, I originally thought, okay, who's the best quarterback and then who's the best receiver, and then combine the two rankings together and you get an average, right? But I like the way you went about it too of, okay, how good is the quarterback when he's throwing to this receiver? Because it's a whole different conversation sometimes with it.
Yes.
So it makes it an interesting list because I think you look at it right there and some people are saying, well, Dak and CD, like Dak's one of the top 10 quarterbacks. He's a top 5 receiver. How are they number 9 on this list? But like I said, the numbers when they're throwing to each other compared to some other top quarterback duos, that makes it a little more understandable in my opinion.
We have the ability to parse out what a quarterback is throwing specifically to a player. So it's not just, oh, I think CD is good. Oh, I think that Dak is good.
Yeah.
We're talking about, and this next group of 5, I think we really get into that conversation. What are you when you are throwing to this specific player? How much of it is it scheme dependent? Are you throwing a lot of big time throws? Do you have turnover worthy plays? What's your chemistry like with this player? So there's so much that we can analyze when we segment, okay, this is what happens when this quarterback is throwing to this specific player. And so I agree with you. 9 feels too low for that duo, but again, that's how we got to that spot.